What's the good word, Joe? DKB here. So there's an interesting situation where by some point before the NFL trade deadline in week 8, we could move on from Corey Davis via trade and not have any negative impacts necessarily if the transition goes smoothly from our young core stepping up. So essentially, we gave a $37.5 million contract to Corey Davis. A lot of people were even potentially talking about this season prior to, week 1 starting, us moving on from Corey Davis or some kind of scenario where he potentially got cut in favor of moving Denzel Mims up, which is a whole nother situation. But any kind of situation where we would have released, cut Corey Davis, whatever the situation is, we would have had to eat a huge point of that contract, $14.33 million. At least for next year, that dead hit shrinks. That dead cap number shrinks to less than $1 million. It's about 666,000, according to what I was able to find. So it makes a lot of sense in the realm of most likely I don't see us extending Corey Davis in favor of continuing to push this youth movement. So not only are we already looking at potentially moving on from him, worst case scenario, we do keep him and let him play out that final year. But then again, I really don't foresee him getting another contract. So it would be more so about just trying to maximize the roster if we really feel like we're in a playoff position at that point. We know that he had a very rough season last year between injuries, having the most drops of his career, which is pretty uncanny for him, and then, of course, being impacted by the quarterback carousel that was going on between Zach Wilson having an injury and then switching between Joe Flacco and Mike White at various points. Now, he did drop weight this offseason. It wasn't anything crazy, something between 5 and 10 pounds from what I recall, but Ethan Greenberg was saying, maybe about a month back now, that he thought that the best wide receiver in the entire camp was Corey Davis. That's arguable. I think we've seen, if not heard more, definitely from Elijah Moore's side of things. But irregardless, it's a great problem to have where we can even have that debate about him being one of the best wide receivers in the room, as he should be according to his contract and what his playing status is. Now, again, the focal point of this being that this could be a mid-season trade, and this opens up a number of possibilities. We end up going into full youth movement once again. We already have about 9. I think we dropped down to about 7 with releasing Bam Knight and making some other moves like Calvin Jackson not being on the 53 or the practice squad anymore. But we're essentially starting about another 7 rookies for this season, in addition to the ones that are only going into their second year for us. Of course, we have a lot more youth. We're bringing in a lot of playoff caliber, Super Bowl experience, Pro Bowl type players onto the roster. But Corey Davis could be the solution to a few different issues. One, again, we continue this youth movement. Garrett Wilson moves up in the pecking order. This also opens up the possibility for the situation Robert Salas mentioned, where even though Denzel Mims might not necessarily be seeing time, even though Denzel Mims has had his best camp as a New York Jet, and even though the coaching staff has acknowledged that he's far ahead of where he was last year and he's in peak physical condition, he hasn't really been able to find much way of playing time. In fact, he's never even been able to really get reps with the starters this entire offseason. So trading Corey Davis, not only offers us potentially a mid-round pick, which is what Denzel Mims is expected to go for. At least what we're asking for right now is a 4th-round pick. Corey Davis should be within the same ballpark, somewhere between a 2 and at least multiple 4 or 5s, I would say, depending on kind of where we're at and how he's performing by the time trade rumors start getting crazy. Trading Corey Davis leads way to Denzel Mims becoming that new Z receiver that Robert Saleh was mentioning he would potentially fulfill if injuries to Corey Davis were to happen. And then there was other coach talk which centered around basically the 3 that were already ahead of him, Corey Davis being one of those, but then Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson. But it's his most likely path. Even on the depth chart, he's listed right after Corey. So you would have to figure, and this is a big if, I'm curious if he gets activated for week 1. If Corey Davis goes down with an injury or we trade him, that should immediately open up playing time for Denzel Mims and again gives him another audition for this team And finally, hopefully, with the starters, at least for a certain amount of reps, to prove that he can be productive for this team. He can make good on his draft status as a second round pick. Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Denzel Mims, and then Braxton Berrios, who essentially will move on from at some point as well. But that is a young trio that you could be very excited about moving us into the future of New York Jets stardom. So, uh, draft capital again, somewhere between a second and maybe multiple mid-round picks. I would assume is somewhere where that's reasonable. Um, but it's interesting. There's definitely going to be a lot of wide receiver needy teams that are out here. Uh, you can take your pick. Ideally, I would say that we would ship him to the NFC, where we don't want to soup up the AFC anymore than what has already happened over the course of this offseason. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Do you think it would be smart to go ahead and dish Corey Davis while the selling price is high? Or does it make more sense to hold on to him, let this roster continue to develop, let him play out his contract potentially next year, and basically rely a little bit more on this compensatory pick formula maybe when he plays out his contract as opposed to trading him? But again, let me know kind of where you're at on your thoughts of trading Corey Davis and potentially where you would move him to. Dallas would definitely still potentially be a good option considering there was interest in Denzel Mims as well. So I think a lot of that is, there's a lot of parallels with where he could go. But looking forward to it, and I'll catch you guys again. Peace.